Hello, I'm Kate Amon, and I am going to talk a little bit about my topic and research that I did for the final research project for this class. So first off, I guess I'll start with defining some of the key terms discussed in my paper, the first of which would be singing red face, which is essentially when a non-native person takes on an archetype that is generalizing something about a Native American culture and is, I guess, performed or created using music. And so this is evident in the history of a lot of the Western performance, and as indicated in our book, there were so many examples of the occurrence of singing red face. And so that is going to lead into my specific example that I chose to kind of analyze and look more into, which would be the song by Loretta Lynn, Your Squaw is on the Warpath. So first of all, squaw, as mentioned in the textbook, is a somewhat controversial term. Some have seen it as a term that, they want to kind of get rid of as far as including it in daily use, while others say that it's just a term to classify a woman or a wife, which is in this case what Loretta Lynn is using to call the wife in the song that she wrote about. And it's talking about how the wife is kind of just, I guess, angry, warlike almost, as portrayed by the weapon that is carried by the album cover and by Loretta in the album cover. She has a weapon in one hand. She's kind of just shielding her eyes in the other and just portraying this image of this angry, vengeful woman who is upset by her husband, who is drunk and crawling back. So this just out of control, coming back and trying to make advances to her, and she's saying, oh, well, this lovin' won't help, this squaw is on the warpath. And so it kind of just portrays this attitude of a relationship in the Native American culture that is misappropriated and just kind of taking it to that next level of portrayal there. And so that is an example of singing red face that stood out to me, and I listened to the song and heard other questionable lyrics, such as when she was saying that the husband left her to tend to the teepee alone and take care of her 6 papooses, which is also another controversial term, as it is seen similarly to pickaninny, I believe that's how you say it, the derogatory term for African American children, which papoose is seen as a derogatory term towards or about Native American children. So that was another controversial little line there that contributes to the misrepresentation here in that song. So the second term I wanted to highlight was, like I was saying, with African American misrepresentation, blackface minstrelsy, which is basically defined as stereotypes of African American people that are portrayed through skits or other media outlets that attempt to portray the African American culture, but end up being somewhat marginalizing and inaccurate often as far as their portrayal, and just kind of showing this people group as inferior to a white American, for example. And so the text went into detail about that and some examples of that were really awesome as far as getting that understanding of how it is just marginalizing. And there are, Jump Jim Crow, for example. There are a lot of different things and phrases and songs that came out of that just kind of shed a very stereotypical and misrepresented light on what is seen as the African American culture as these shows became popular, and that's what it was portraying, was what people thought of as African American culture. So, and one image I did want to show, I printed out since I'm not too good at technology, didn't know how to screenplay it there, but I found this image of a cartoon, and it shows a child, and it's just showing his idea, and he's saying in the word bubble, "Really? You don't look like an Indian." And it's showing Pocahontas and a football mascot that's showing an Indian, and another kind of savage-looking face up there up top, and someone on horseback. And it kind of just shows a really good image of what these types of things, these stereotypes and misrepresentations do to a culture is that this kid is now thinking, oh, well, she doesn't look like, Pocahontas, or she doesn't have a horse that she rides into battle, or, whatever you have, gleaned from media as your idea of a Native American. But it just shows so accurately, I think, what many kids and adults alike have attained as their cultural representation from these media outlets that we have here. So the next topic I wanted to just discuss that I found a lot of information on in my research is cultural misappropriations. And so that would be essentially just intentionally taking a tangible or non-tangible commodity of a culture and intentionally using it to create a stereotype or for some kind of economic or personal gain or benefit by an outsider. So that's someone misappropriating a element of a culture and using it in an inauthentic way for some kind of underlying gain. So that also is kind of a precursor to the next term, which would be cultural confusion. So these misappropriations and other stereotypes, through, like I mentioned, like seeing red face, stuff like that, just starts to wear on a society as a whole and starts to be imprinted into the minds of people viewing this media, and kind of confuses a culture. And so cultural confusion would be just the misunderstanding of a culture and what's truly authentic about the culture, and that's often through the spread of such misrepresentations through media or a culture at the time. So that is a key term that is helpful in understanding how we get to this point. It's through that spread of media where a culture becomes confused and just loses sight of what's authentically true about a culture or a people group. And another key issue that should be addressed as far as included in the research and just very key to understanding this topic is racial antipathy, is just this feeling of dislike or opposition towards a group or culture that is the result of such confusion and misappropriation and misrepresentation, just evident in all areas and outlets of media. Is that soon a culture is going to start to grow opposition or just have negative ideas, attitudes, feelings, whatever it may be, just towards this culture that don't come from accuracy. So that is starting to be found to have stemmed from such media outlets as music. And so that kind of goes one direction, and the other sort of would be the idealized sympathy. So that's kind of going the way towards ameliorating these misrepresentations by having a newfound empathy towards a culture or group. And so that is just a sympathy towards like an imaginary caricature of, say, a Native American, where the voice of misappropriation and misrepresentation are still evident, but it's kind of that empathetic sentiment that's being expressed. And so lastly, playing Indian is another big key term I wanted to highlight as far as in the research. And that's just the dressing or acting like the stereotypical Indian. And so that's something that's just become like a cultural norm, I guess, where you have people, kids, whatever, dressing up in feathers or beads or talking in what they call Hollywood Indian broken English, just kind of the media's version of what an Indian is, what a Native American is. So that is occurring, and that's kind of solidifying these stereotypes and just teaching people, okay, hey, this is how they act, or this is how, they look. But then when you actually have direct contact and research and start to get to the bottom of where this comes from, it's just inaccurate and often inaccurate. And so that is one thing that has kind of shaped the way that the culture has seen Native Americans, is through this sort of play that that just attempts to portray them, but definitely is doing damage as far as how society sees Native Americans and how Native Americans see themselves. So with that, I will conclude with just saying that there's a lot of different aspects of studying, Native American misappropriation in music, and it has been very interesting to actually listen to some of these songs and learn more about this topic. And so I urge any listeners to do so, and thank you for listening.